start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the board.
Okay. I grew up in Hayes, and then once I graduated, I went to KU. And after KU, I received a degree in sociology and business. And sociology made me learned and interesting, and business got me a job. And then I went to work for Sprint for a number of years in Kansas City. And then when I married, we moved to Topeka. And I still was with Sprint for a period of time. And then we spent 6 years in Topeka, 6A schools. And then, to be quite honest, my husband was looking for a different position, but we were seeking smaller schools. I had had that experience of a 6A school, and I was seeking smaller schools. And I had family still in Hayes, and so we looked at opportunities in Hayes as well as elsewhere, but ended up coming back. So a lot of people will talk about how, it's important in Hayes that we have the college and we have the medical center, and we need to be mindful that we have a solid educational system, K through 12, so that they can attract and retain employees at those two institutions. And we were one of those. And so that's a very important argument for me. It was said during the Facility Needs Committee that, the K through 12 system has to keep pace. And I truly believe that. Because given that choice of the elementary school, I looked at the test results, and so I know that those are important. I'm proud to come back to Hayes. I come from 3 generations of flood lawyers who served the community for many, many years. I come from a music educator who gave many years to the school system, but also to the college and the community. And this is the way that I can give back. This is a way for me to continue that legacy of service, and that's important to me. It's important to me to have that pride in my community and to find something that I can do to contribute to the community.
Okay. Should the public's desire for neighborhood schools and choice override the cost savings and the education benefits we've heard about eliminating schools or closing schools?
Are you talking specifically about Washington or just in general?
In general.
Okay. Hayes is very unusual in that you are given that opportunity. And so when I was asking questions back in the spring, when I was trying to put myself up for the appointment, I was asking specific questions about that, because in my head I thought if we did move towards a districting, would that be easier to manage those costs, And what I've learned since then is I think that we're not at that point yet. I think that the steps that are being taken to watch enrollments and trying to cap classes at those and make small adjustments, which means some families are affected. And I know obviously during the Washington repurposing, very specific families were affected. But by and large, I think we can maintain that choice, at least right now. I don't think that necessarily we have to move down that districting path at this time.
How would you categorize art, music, media? Do you consider those as classes, programs that we could look at to maybe have some fees there, and also getting into the extracurricular kind of be paying for certain things?
There again, I hope we're not at that point yet. I can't say what's coming down. Difficult decisions will have to continue to be made. But when I see the value of those programs, and the number one goal is to educate and ultimately graduate these students so they can be productive members of our society. And for some, it will be that music, it will be a particular sport, it may be DECA, it may be FFA, it may be journalism. And so if that program, that successful program, and we have so many successes in our district, all those that I've mentioned have had great success in the last couple of years. If it can touch one student and lead them to a path after graduation, then absolutely we need to try to save that and see the value in that.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to cut costs, and if so, have you thought of places where we might look to cut costs?
Constantly. You know, it's education is a service industry, right? So our biggest asset and also our largest cost is in our employees. So, you know, we were at 86% before this year in our salaries and benefits. We were closer to 89% this last year because we were trying to cut that remaining percentage, right? So, of course, then that number is going to look bigger. Nobody wants to take a salary cut, and we don't want to lose employees. I know that was painful last spring for everyone to go through. So where do you find those dollars? I think we continue to try to look at that 11%, and then the state comes through and says you got to find more. I do wonder if we can work with the negotiating team not to look at salaries, but to look at some of those benefits. Is there some cost savings in those benefits? I know nobody wants to lose a benefit, but is there something we could do differently that might have some cost savings? So I'm very eager to go into negotiations this year, trying to look at some of those dollars.
And speaking of negotiations, it's been in the news a lot, limiting what can be negotiated. That's
Sure.
been talked of at the state level. And this year the board has changed its approach. Last year we had administrators. Do you think, should we limit the topics that are negotiated, and should the whole board be active? What are your thoughts there?
Obviously, this will be my first time going through that process. So really my only experience is what I've heard from past years, and different things have been tried, and I think it's a difficult process regardless. With my business background, negotiations are not something that's new to me. What's new to me is the topics being discussed, and I think some of the passion that's behind it, and I can understand that. So what I hope that we can do is come together and speak rationally, and make sure that all the information that one side has, the other side has, and that we're all looking at the same data. I'm a benchmark person, so, you know, if every other state or the majority of this, if every other school or the majority of the schools across the state are doing X, Y, and Z, I would like to understand why we're not, and I would like us to speak rationally about that. If we have a good reason for why we're the only one doing it, let's make sure everybody understands that. Let's make sure the public understands that, and let's put that to rest. So I'm eager to have all of the board involved because it's letting me come to the table where previously I might not have been able to see what all this is about. Ultimately, you know, someone made the comment, you know, it's a good negotiation if everybody walks away angry or unhappy. I'm not sure I like that approach, but obviously compromise is what it's about, right? Nobody's going to get exactly what they want, but hopefully we can come to some common agreement.
Are you a proponent of long-range planning, say 5 years or so?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if 5 years is the right number. It depends on what we're talking about. We talk about technology, it seems like we need to be talking 3 years, not 5 years, just with the way that moves. We're talking about these facilities, okay, we're already 20 years past when we should have been talking about them, right? And that's troubling to me. So there, I think we definitely need to understand the 5-year plan, if not the 10-year plan, with a lot of those maintenance issues and the building and the growth that we need. It ties back into, do we need a bond? I think the answer is yes. And we need to really get our arms wrapped around that and figure out if, you know, if a bond is not feasible or not feasible at that size, what can we conceivably do with our, you know, the dollars that we have.
And that was my next question, okay. Was, do you, how do you feel about a bond? And so you're pretty, and updating facilities, obviously.
I am. You know, one of the biased issues I have is security. It troubles me that we do not have secure entrances to all of our schools. So that's number one. Number two is, it's disheartening to me to come back to Hayes and want to be proud of these schools and proud of our community, and to see that we have, you know, some crumbling buildings, crumbling facilities, stains on the ceiling, bad lighting. I think that our children deserve better than that. I think as a taxpayer, I want to make sure that they get that. And, then when I attend functions at the 12th Street Auditorium, for example, I understand that not everyone supports the arts or believes that's necessary. But when I sit there and I look at the magic that is happening on stage and the talent that we've had in the past, and will have in the future with the wonderful talent we have, it's troubling then to look around that building. And again, I think that we can do better as a community to support some of those things.
Okay, thank you. Technology, it's time to renew that contract. Is that a place where we can save some money? Should we be looking at putting something in every child's hands?
It's a big debate. It's a big debate. What I like that's happening is we're starting maybe we started at the beginning talking about devices, but now we've stepped back and we have that technology plan in place, and everybody understands what the vision is and why we're doing this, why technology is important in the classroom. And there are a couple pieces that I think are important to different people. I know as a parent there are different pieces that are important to me, and I mentioned one the other night. It's the fact that with 25, 27 in a classroom, you have varying levels and skill sets in there, and that technology can allow you to differentiate. Again, it's a tool. We're not trying to replace a teacher, but it's tools that are at our disposal that would really enhance that education experience. I think they caution it doesn't make it more efficient, but they can do more and do it better. And again, I really like that differentiation that's possible there. I like the word transform. It can transform that educational experience. It's not like it was when I went through school, when you went through school. We're doing different things. The children are being taught to think in a different way that ultimately will help in society. And that's the role of that education. Is it one-to-one? I don't know. I need, that's the feedback we need to hear from those that are in the classroom and those that work with technology. Given that it's a tool in the classroom, but, not just the tool, it's not replacing the teacher, but a tool, just like a textbook would be, or a smartboard or anything else, do we need a set for every classroom? I don't know. I mean, those are the arguments I want to hear come forward. I have said in the past, I just graduated a senior last year, does he need one at home? I'm in the position that no, he does not. We have computers at home he's able to access. I would rather see those funds being used, possibly, give them more and better at the high school that doesn't necessarily need to come home with those students that have other opportunities at home. Or let's put that money initially in the middle school and the grade schools that haven't had that technology for a while. Theirs is 8 years outdated. So it's a big challenge for us. And I think the hardest part is going to be once we decide what's best and we move forward, how do we convince the public that that was the right way to go? I mean, as Board Member Schwartz said, if it's a matter of purchasing the technology or working on some of these maintenance issues, what will it come down to? And that's tricky because I don't feel like we can stand still on technology. We will just get further and further behind. So I don't think that's the answer. It will probably come somewhere in the middle. We'll have the Cadillac that we really would like to see and we think is the best, and then this is what we can afford over a 3, possibly a 5-year time frame.
The last concept that I want to ask about is the Common Core, also known as the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards. They're back in the legislature. They've talked again about scrapping those standards and going back to square one. What are your thoughts about that?
There again, I'm a benchmark person. So the fact that most of the nation have supported Common Core, it didn't come down from a federal mandate. It came down from multiple states coming together. I really have to question, why would we go against that? Why do we truly believe that, do we have solid reasons for going against everyone else on Common Core? I struggle with it as a parent. Is it a different way to look at things? But that's not necessarily bad. And again, I have faith and confidence that the experts looked at that, and this is the approach we need to go with. So I'm in support.
That's all the questions I had. Is there anything we didn't cover that you think is important or want to add?
You didn't touch too much on the funding issues. Obviously that's the big one. And perhaps I didn't understand fully because there was such an urgency when I became involved last spring. But when I look at it, the most important function we have in our society is to educate this next generation, to prepare them to be productive citizens for our continued success and prosperity. And while I think so many agree with that, the level of commitment or willingness to fund that is just under constant debate and struggle. At my core, I'm doing this because I want to be part of that struggle. I believe in it enough that this is worthy of my time to try to be a part of that, to fight for those dollars. And to figure out, once we have said dollars, what is the best way that we can spread them across to give the best education we can to our next generation.
That fight for those dollars, are you active, like at the state level, contacting representatives?
What I appreciate about Superintendent Catt is that he has brought in those legislators, and I've sat in on those meetings. Those that are willing to come and speak to us as an existing board. I understand that it's not easy at their level either, just like it's not easy in our local environment to try to convince others. And I just hope, and I'm going to try to have faith, that they are receiving the right information that they need to make the best decision. I worry, based on what just happened with the block grant funding and how quickly that went through, that perhaps the right information wasn't provided at that time. And of course, like others, I wish that if we want to look at the school finance formula, that we wouldn't have just scrapped what we have. While they do that, why couldn't we leave in place status quo until we could come up with that new one? So I realize they don't have an easy job, but I, like many, am discouraged right now. But at the same time, I know that perhaps it seems worse than it's ever been. I'm not sure that's the case. I know these arguments have gone on for years, and it will continue to ebb and flow, given the number of dollars that it takes of the state budget. But at the same time, locally, we have to do what we can. I am thrilled that we were able to absorb the first initial cut, which I guess now will change with block grant funding. But the fact that we did have our finances in a state where we could absorb that is something to be applauded. And we will just have to continue to be very financially astute as we make every decision to prepare for what could get conceivably worse before it gets better. And at the same time, we have to keep morale up, because we have teachers that still have to go in day after day and educate our children. And I know they are discouraged and they're disheartened, and we need them to walk in on a Monday morning and feel energized and stay focused on what's important, which is educating our children to the best of their abilities.
Okay, well, thank you very much.